She was nothing. That's what they told her every single day. Not in words. In looks. In the way they turned away when she entered a room. In the way her own mother couldn't meet her eyes at the dinner table. Ella Thorne had been born into the Thorne family, one of the most powerful bloodlines in the paranormal world. But somewhere along the way, she'd become the mistake they all pretended didn't exist. Her father was a warlock. Her mother, a seer. Her brothers commanded respect in every supernatural circle from here to the Atlantic. And Ella? Ella was the one who couldn't manifest a single spell. Not one. By 17, she'd stopped trying. By 18, she'd stopped hoping. By 19, on the night of the winter solstice, they made it official. The family gathering was held in the great hall of Thorne Manor, a place of black marble and silver moonlight, where the most important decisions were made. Ella stood in the center of that hall, surrounded by every member of her bloodline, aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them staring at her like she was a stain they couldn't quite wash out. The hall was enormous, vaulted ceilings that stretched up into shadow, chandeliers made of crystallized magic that cast a cold blue light across everything. The walls were lined with portraits of Thorne ancestors, powerful warlocks and seers whose eyes seemed to follow you, judging you, finding you wanting. Ella's feet were bare against the cold marble. She'd been summoned here without explanation. No warning, just a servant appearing at her door at midnight, telling her to come to the great hall immediately. She'd known what it meant. The end. Her father sat on the high seat, a throne carved from obsidian and bone. He was a tall man, with silver threading through his dark hair, and eyes that held the weight of centuries of power. He'd never looked at her with anything but disappointment. Her mother stood to his right, her hands folded in front of her, her expression carefully blank. That was worse than anger. That was erasure. Her brothers, Marcus and Devon, stood with the other family members, their arms crossed, their faces unreadable. Marcus was the eldest, a prodigy who'd mastered 17 different types of magic by the time he was 25. Devon was the warrior, trained in combat magic and paranormal warfare. And then there was Ella, who couldn't do anything. Ella Thorne, her father said, his voice echoing through the vaulted ceiling like thunder. You have been given every opportunity, every resource, every advantage of our name and our power. She said nothing. She'd learned long ago that speaking only made it worse. And yet, he continued, standing slowly from his throne. You remain powerless, useless, a liability to this family. The word hung in the air like poison. Liability. Her mother looked away. Her brothers exchanged glances, not of sympathy, but of relief. Relief that it wasn't them. Relief that they weren't the ones standing in the center of that hall, about to be destroyed. Do you know what it costs us? Her father asked, descending the steps from his throne. Do you know what it costs to maintain a powerless member of House Thorne? The magical energy required to hide your weakness from the other families? The shame we endure every time someone asks about you? He was standing in front of her now, close enough that she could smell the magic on him, sharp and acrid, like ozone before a lightning strike. I've given you 19 years, he said quietly. 19 years of patience, 19 years of hope that perhaps your power would manifest, that perhaps you were simply a late bloomer. He reached out and tilted her chin up with one finger, forcing her to meet his eyes. But you're not a late bloomer, Ella. You're a failure, and I will not have a failure bearing the Thorne name. He dropped his hand and stepped back. Therefore, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, we sever you from House Thorne. Your name is no longer ours. Your blood is no longer ours. You are cast out, effective immediately. You will leave this manor within the hour. You will take nothing but the clothes on your back. You will never return. And if you ever speak the Thorne name again, We will hunt you down and erase you from existence." The words should have destroyed her, but something inside Ella had already been destroyed so many times that there was nothing left to break. She looked at her mother, waiting for something. A sign. A word. Anything that would suggest that the woman who'd given birth to her felt even a shred of maternal instinct. Her mother turned away. Ella looked at her brothers. Marcus wouldn't meet her eyes. Devon was already walking toward the door, dismissing her from his mind before she'd even left the hall. "I understand," Ella said quietly. Her father nodded, satisfied. "Good. Then you understand that you are nothing, that you have always been nothing, and that the world will be better off without you in it." She turned and walked toward the door. No tears, no pleas, no rage, just the sound of her footsteps on marble, echoing like a funeral bell through the great hall. She could feel their eyes on her back, could feel the weight of their indifference like a physical thing pressing down on her shoulders. When she reached the door, she paused for just a moment, long enough to hear her father say to the assembled family, "Let's never speak of her again." Then she walked out into the night. Outside, the winter night was brutal. Snow fell in thick, suffocating sheets. The wind cut like broken glass. Ella had no coat, no shoes that were meant for this cold. She wore only a thin nightgown and a robe that provided almost no protection against the elements. The drive of Thorn Manor stretched out before her, a long, winding path lined with ancient trees. The snow was already up to her ankles. Her feet were bare, and within minutes, they were numb. She walked without thinking about where she was going. Her mind was strangely quiet, empty, like she'd already died, and this was just her ghost, moving through the world without purpose or direction. The gates of the manor loomed ahead, iron and stone, designed to keep people in as much as to keep them out. A guard stood at the entrance, wrapped in furs and magic that kept him warm. He didn't stop her as she passed. He didn't even look at her. She was already forgotten. The forest at the edge of the property seemed to call to her. Dark, deep, endless. She walked toward it without thinking. The snow was up to her knees now. Her fingers were already going numb. Her lips had turned blue. This was how it would end, she thought distantly. Alone in the cold, unwanted, unmissed, the way she'd always been meant to end. The trees grew denser. The moonlight disappeared. She was walking through absolute darkness now, guided by nothing but instinct and the slow, creeping numbness that was beginning to feel like peace. She thought about her mother, about the way she'd looked away. She thought about her brothers, about the way they'd already moved on. She thought about her father, about the way he'd said she was nothing. And she realized that he was right. She was nothing. She'd always been nothing. And soon, she would be nothing at all. The ground beneath her feet became uneven. Rocks jutted up through the snow. She stumbled, caught herself, kept walking. The trees were so close now that their branches whipped across her face, drawing blood. She didn't feel it. She didn't feel anything anymore. Then the ground gave way. One moment she was walking. The next, she was falling. The earth simply disappeared beneath her feet. And suddenly she was tumbling down a ravine, rocks tearing at her skin, branches whipping across her face, her body slamming against stone again and again. She landed hard at the bottom. The wind knocked completely out of her lungs. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. Her ribs screamed with pain. Her left arm was bent at an angle that suggested it was broken. Blood ran down her face from a gash on her forehead. This was it. This was the end. But the night wasn't done with her yet. A sound cut through the darkness. Not human. Something deeper, something that vibrated through her broken ribs and made her heart stutter in her chest. A growl, then another, and another. Ella's eyes flew open, and in the darkness, she saw them. Eyes, glowing amber and gold and silver, surrounding her in a perfect circle. Wolves, but not ordinary wolves. These creatures were massive, easily the size of horses, and their fur seemed to shimmer with something that wasn't quite light. Paranormal wolves. Shifters. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something shift inside her chest. Something ancient. Something that had been sleeping so deeply she'd forgotten it was there. A presence. Vast and powerful, and impossibly old. The largest wolf stepped forward. Its eyes were the color of molten gold, and when it looked at her, Ella felt seen for the first time in her entire life. Really seen. Not as a failure, not as a liability, but as something precious, something worth protecting. The wolf lowered its massive head and nudged her gently. Then, one by one, the other wolves moved closer, creating a barrier around her body. They were warm. So warm. And slowly, impossibly, Ella stopped shaking. She closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. When she woke, she was in a cabin. Not a small cabin. A sprawling, beautiful cabin made of dark wood and stone, with a fireplace that roared with flames that burned in colors she'd never seen before. Deep purples and blues mixed with gold. Furs covered the floor. The air smelled like pine, and something else. Something wild. She was lying on a bed. A real bed, with soft blankets and pillows that smelled like cedar and smoke. And standing at the window, silhouetted against the moonlight, was a man. He was tall. Impossibly tall. His shoulders were broad enough to block out the light, and his hair was dark. So dark it seemed to absorb the shadows around him. When he turned to look at her, Ella's breath caught. His eyes were the same molten gold as the wolf's. "You're awake," he said. His voice was low and rough, like gravel and thunder mixed together. Ella tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. Every muscle ached. Every bone felt like it had been shattered and reassembled wrong. "Don't move," the man said, and he was suddenly beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your injuries were severe." 3 days. "Who are you?" Ella whispered. "My name is Kael," he said. "And you're something we've been waiting for a very long time." He pulled back the blanket, and Ella looked down at her body. Her skin was covered in marks, not scars, but symbols, intricate, glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with a light of their own. They ran from her collarbone down her arms, across her ribs, down her legs. "What is this?" she breathed. "Your bloodline," Kael said, and there was something like reverence in his voice. "Your real bloodline, not the Thorns. They were never your true family. They were keepers. Guardians of a secret they didn't even understand." He sat on the edge of the bed, and Ella noticed for the first time how carefully he moved around her, like she was made of glass, like she was the most fragile, precious thing he'd ever seen. But there was something else in his eyes, something dark, something that looked almost like fear. "There's an old prophecy," Kael continued, his voice dropping lower. "One that's been passed down through my pack for 300 years. It speaks of a girl born with dormant power, a girl who would be rejected by her false family, a girl who would nearly die in the winter cold. And when she did, when she was at the very edge of death, her true power would awaken." Ella stared at the symbols on her skin. They were beautiful, terrible, powerful. "The prophecy calls her the Moonborn," Kael said softly. "The one who walks between worlds, human and paranormal, light and shadow, the one who will either save us all or destroy us all." He paused, And in that pause, Ella felt something shift, something he wasn't telling her. "What aren't you saying?" she asked. Kael stood abruptly and walked to the window. His jaw was clenched. His hands were balled into fists. "There was another Moonborn," he said finally. 200 years ago. Her name was Lyra. The name hung in the air between them like a curse. "What happened to her?" Ella asked. Kael didn't answer for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I failed her. I was supposed to protect her. I was supposed to keep her safe. And I failed." He turned to look at Ella, and she saw the weight of centuries in his eyes. The guilt, the grief, the burden of a failure that had never healed. "She died," he said. "Go, and it was my fault." Ella wanted to ask more, but something in his expression told her that this was all he could give her right now. This confession, this crack in the armor of the man who'd saved her life. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you need to understand what you're facing," Kael said. "You need to understand that being the Moonborn isn't a gift. It's a curse. It's a target on your back. It's a responsibility that will consume you if you let it." He walked back to the bed and knelt beside her. His eyes were intense, desperate. "And I need you to understand that I will not fail you the way I failed her," he said. "I will protect you. No matter what it costs me, no matter what I have to do, I will keep you alive." He said it like a vow, like a promise written in blood and starlight. But underneath it, Ella could hear the fear. The terror of a man who'd already lost everything once and couldn't bear to lose it again. Over the next days, Ella began to understand her new reality. The cabin was located deep in the forest, far from any human settlements. It was protected by wards, magical barriers that kept outsiders from finding it. The pack lived in the surrounding area, in homes scattered throughout the woods, all connected by a network of magical pathways that only they could see. Kael brought her food, broth made from herbs she didn't recognize, bread that was still warm, fruit that tasted like summer even though it was the middle of winter. He changed her bandages, cleaned her wounds, applied salves that smelled like magic and made her skin tingle. And he talked to her. He told her about the pack, about how they'd been waiting for her for 300 years, about how the prophecy had been passed down through generations, each pack leader preparing for the day when the Moonborn would finally awaken. He told her about the paranormal world, about the different factions, the vampires who ruled the cities, the witches who controlled the magic, the fae who lived in the spaces between worlds, the shifters, his people, who were scattered across the wild places, trying to survive in a world that wanted them dead. He told her about the dangers, about the hunters who would come for her, about the paranormal families who would want to use her power, about the ancient things that slept beneath the earth, waiting for a Moonborn to awaken so they could rise again. But he didn't tell her about Lyra. Not yet. On the 4th day, Ella woke from a dream. In the dream, she was running through the forest. Her feet were bare, but they didn't hurt. Her body was strong, powerful. She was chasing something, or being chased. She couldn't tell which. Then she saw him, a wolf, massive and golden, with eyes that burned like molten metal. He was running beside her, and he was calling her name. "Moonborn," he whispered. "Moonborn, come back to me." But his voice was different, younger, sadder. She reached out to touch him, and suddenly she was falling through darkness, falling toward something vast and ancient and hungry. She woke gasping, her heart pounding in her chest. Kael was there immediately, sitting on the edge of the bed, his hand on her shoulder. "You were dreaming," he said softly. "There was a wolf," Ella said, her breath still ragged. "He was calling me. He said, He said my name, but not Ella, something else. Kael's expression shifted. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, fear, grief. "What did he call you?" he asked. "Moonborn," Ella whispered. "He called me Moonborn, but it felt like he was calling me something more, something older." Kael's hand tightened on her shoulder, and for a moment, she saw something raw in his expression, something that looked almost like pain. "Your true name is Selene," he said finally. "That's what the prophecy calls you. Selene, the Moonborn, the one who walks between worlds." He turned to look at her, and his eyes were haunted. "And the wolf in your dream. That was Lyra. She's been trying to reach you, to warn you." The next morning, Kael took Ella outside for the first time since she'd arrived at the cabin. The forest was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. Snow covered everything, turning the world into a landscape of white and silver. The trees were tall and ancient, their branches heavy with ice, and everywhere she could feel the magic. It was in the air, in the earth, in the very fabric of the world around her. "Your body is healing," Kael said as they walked, "but your power is still dormant. We need to wake it up. We need to teach you how to control it." "How do I do that?" Ella asked. "You shift," Kael said simply. "You become what you were always meant to be." He stopped in a clearing and turned to face her. The snow crunched beneath his feet. "Close your eyes," he said. "Feel the magic inside you. It's there. It's always been there. You just have to let it out." Ella closed her eyes. At first, she felt nothing, just the cold wind on her face and the sound of the forest around her. But then she felt it, a warmth in her chest, a presence, something vast and powerful that had been sleeping inside her for her entire life. "Don't fight it," Kael said, his voice like a lifeline. "Let it come. Let it transform you." The warmth spread outward. It moved through her veins like liquid fire. It reached every nerve ending, every cell, every part of her being. And then it happened. Her bones began to shift. Her skin began to change. Her body began to transform into something other, something more. It didn't hurt. It was like coming home. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer human. She was a wolf, massive and powerful, with fur that shimmered like moonlight. And when she looked down at her paws, she saw the same symbols that had been on her human skin, now glowing with an ethereal light. "You're beautiful," Kael whispered. And in that moment, Ella understood. She understood what she was. She understood what she'd always been meant to be. She was the Moonborn, and she was finally awake. Over the next weeks, Ella's training intensified. Kael taught her to shift between human and wolf form, taught her to control her power, taught her that the symbols on her skin weren't marks of shame. They were marks of destiny. Each one represented a different aspect of her power. Each one was a gift. But the training was harder than she expected. On the 7th day of training, something went wrong. Ella was practicing her shift in the clearing when she felt the power surge. It came without warning, a sudden, violent explosion of energy that erupted from her core. She screamed. The ground beneath her feet froze instantly. Ice spread outward in a perfect circle, crystallizing the snow, freezing the trees, creating a landscape of frozen beauty and terrible danger. Kael was there in seconds, shifting into his human form, running toward her. "Ella! Ella! Look at me!" But she couldn't hear him. The power was consuming her, overwhelming her, threatening to tear her apart from the inside out. The ice spread further. It reached the trees at the edge of the clearing, and they froze solid, their branches becoming brittle and dangerous. One of them cracked. It fell directly toward Kael. He didn't move. He just kept running toward her, his eyes locked on hers. "Celine," he shouted, "come back to me. You have to come back." The tree was inches away from him now. Ella could see the splinters of ice flying through the air. And then, with a final surge of will, she pulled the power back inside herself. The ice stopped spreading. The tree fell harmlessly to the side, and Ella collapsed. Kael caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her into his arms, holding her as she shook. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's okay. You're okay. You're safe." But when Ella looked up at him, she saw blood running down his arm. The falling tree had cut him. Her power had hurt him. "I hurt you," she whispered. "It's nothing," Kael said, but his voice was strained. "Just a scratch." "No," Ella said, tears streaming down her face. "I could have killed you. I could have—" "But you didn't," Kael interrupted. "You stopped it. You pulled the power back. You saved me." He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are not dangerous," he said fiercely. "You are powerful. And there's a difference." But Ella could see the fear in his eyes. The same fear she felt. That night, Mira found Ella sitting alone on the cabin's balcony, staring out at the frozen forest. "What's wrong?" Mira asked, sitting down beside her. "What if I'm dangerous?" Ella said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "What if my power is too much? What if I hurt someone? What if I hurt Kael?" Mira walked over and took Ella's hands in hers. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "You are not dangerous. You are powerful. There's a difference." "But what if I can't control it?" Ella asked. "What if—" "You will control it," Mira interrupted. "Because you care about us. Because you care about Kael. And that's what separates a weapon from a person. A weapon doesn't care who it hurts. But you do. You care so much that you're terrified of hurting anyone." She squeezed Ella's hands. "That's not dangerous, Celine. That's beautiful." But Ella wasn't convinced. Ronan, Kael's second in command, was different from the others. He was a warrior, scarred and fierce, and he didn't go easy on her just because she was new to her power. "You need to be able to defend yourself," he said, throwing her to the ground for the 100th time. "Because there are things out there that will try to kill you, and I won't always be there to protect you." But after the incident with the ice, something changed. When Ella trained with Ronan, he kept his distance. He flinched when she got close. He looked at her with something that looked almost like fear. It broke her heart. One day, she confronted him. "You're afraid of me," she said. Ronan didn't deny it. "I've seen what your power can do," he said. "I've seen the ice. I've seen the way it spreads. I've seen the way it destroys everything in its path." "I didn't mean to," Ella started. "I know," Ronan interrupted. "But that doesn't change what happened. That doesn't change the fact that you could kill us all without even trying." He walked away, leaving Ella standing alone in the clearing. And for the first time since she'd arrived at the cabin, she wondered if Kael had made a mistake. If bringing her here had been a terrible error in judgment, Lyra, the pack's seer, was different from the others. She was old, older than anyone Ella had ever met. Her eyes held the weight of centuries, and when she looked at Ella, it was like she was seeing through her, into her, past her. "You have her eyes," Lyra said one day, studying Ella's face. "The other Moonborn, Lyra, you have her eyes." "Kael said she died," Ella said carefully. "He said it was his fault." Lyra's expression grew sad. "Kael blames himself for many things," she said. "But the truth is more complicated. Lyra didn't die because Kael failed her. She died because she chose to sacrifice herself. She chose to seal away the ancient thing that was rising, and it cost her everything. "What ancient thing?" Ella asked. Lyra looked away. "Something that should have stayed buried," she said. "Something that's been sleeping for 1,000 years. Something that's been waiting for a Moonborn to awaken so it could rise again." She turned back to Ella, and her eyes were filled with a terrible knowledge. "And now that you've awakened, it knows. It can feel you. And it's coming." One night, Ella found Kael standing alone on the cabin's balcony, looking out at the moonlit forest. She'd learned to move silently, so he didn't hear her approach. She stood in the doorway, watching him, and for the first time, she saw him not as the powerful alpha who'd saved her life, but as a man carrying an impossible burden. But something was different tonight. His shoulders were shaking. Kael was crying. Ella had never seen him cry. She'd never imagined that he could cry. He was so strong, so powerful, so invincible. But here he was, tears streaming down his face, his hands gripping the railing so hard his knuckles had turned white. "Kael," she whispered. He turned around so fast he nearly fell. When he saw her, he quickly wiped his face, trying to compose himself. But it was too late. Ella had already seen. "What's wrong?" she asked, walking toward him. "Nothing," Kael said, but his voice was hoarse, broken. "Don't lie to me," Ella said. "And not after everything." Kael looked away, out at the forest. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm terrified," he said. "Of what?" Ella asked. "Of losing you," Kael said, and the words seemed to cost him everything. "Of failing you the way I failed Lyra. Of waking up one day and finding you gone." He turned to look at her, and his eyes were raw, vulnerable, completely exposed. "I've lived for 200 years, he continued. 200 years of guilt. 200 years of knowing that I failed the one person I was supposed to protect. And I thought when you came, I could fix it. I could do it right this time." He stepped toward her, and Ella could see his hands shaking. "But I can't," he said. "I can't protect you from everything. I can't keep you safe from your own power. I can't keep you safe from the ancient thing that's coming. I can't keep you safe from anything." His voice broke. "And if something happens to you, if I lose you, I won't survive it. I can't survive it. You're everything to me, Celine. You're my reason for existing. You're the only thing that makes the last 200 years of pain mean anything." He reached out and took her hand, and she felt him trembling. "I'm not strong enough," he whispered. "I'm not strong enough to protect you, and that terrifies me more than anything else in this world." Ella looked at this man, this powerful, ancient alpha, and saw the truth. He wasn't invincible. He was just as broken as she was, just as afraid, just as desperate. She stepped closer to him, and suddenly they were inches apart. "You don't have to protect me from everything," she said softly. "You just have to be here. You just have to stay." Kael reached up and cupped her face in his hands. His touch was gentle, reverent. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, they just stood there, breathing the same air, their foreheads almost touching. Ella could feel the heat radiating from his body, could feel the rapid beating of his heart, could feel the raw need in him, not just physical, but emotional. A need to be close to her, to know that she was real, that she was alive. "Celine," he whispered, and her name sounded like a prayer on his lips. His hand moved from her face to her neck, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. His eyes were locked on hers, and she could see the war happening inside him. The desire, the fear, the desperate need to hold her. She reached up and placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart thundering beneath her palm. "Kael," she whispered. He leaned down, and for a moment, she thought he was going to kiss her. She wanted him to. Every fiber of her being wanted him to. But then, suddenly, he pulled back. "I can't," he said, his voice rough. "Not like this. Not when you're still figuring out who you are. Not when there's so much danger coming." He stepped away from her, putting distance between them. "I need you to understand something," he said, his voice steadier now but still raw. "Oh, what I feel for you. It's not just attraction. It's not just desire. It's something deeper. Something that scares me more than anything else." He looked at her, and his eyes were intense. "I would tear the world apart to keep you alive," he said. "I would burn everything to ash. I would sacrifice my own soul. You are everything to me, Celine. Everything." He turned away, gripping the railing again. "And that's why I can't touch you. Because if I do, I won't be able to let go. And you need to be free. You need to be able to make your own choices. You need to be able to become who you're meant to be without being tied to me." Ella wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that she didn't want to be free, that she wanted to be tied to him, that she wanted him to touch her. But she could see the pain in his expression, could see how much it was costing him to pull away. So instead, she simply said, "I'm not going anywhere." And Kael nodded, but he didn't turn around. That night, Ella was alone in the cabin when the doubts began. She was standing in front of the mirror, looking at the symbols on her skin. They were glowing brighter now, pulsing with power. And with each pulse, she felt something shift inside her. Something dark. Something dangerous. What if Kael was wrong? What if her power wasn't meant to save anyone? What if it was meant to destroy? She thought about the way the ground had frozen beneath her feet when she'd been training with Ronan. She thought about the way the trees had bent to her will. She thought about the raw, primal force that lived inside her, waiting to be unleashed. What if she lost control? What if her power destroyed the pack? What if it destroyed Kael? The thought made her chest tighten, made her breathing become shallow. She walked to the window and looked out at the forest. Somewhere out there, the pack was hunting. Somewhere out there, Kael was running in his wolf form, his golden fur shimmering in the moonlight. And she was here, alone, terrified. The door opened, and Mira walked in, her expression immediately shifting to concern when she saw Ella's face. "What's wrong?" Mira asked. "What if I'm dangerous?" Ella said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "What if my power is too much? What if I hurt someone? What if I hurt Kael?" Mira walked over and took Ella's hands in hers. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "You are not dangerous. You are powerful. There's a difference." "But what if I can't control it?" Ella asked. "What if—" "You will control it," Mira interrupted. "Because you care about us. Because you care about Kael. And that's what separates a weapon from a person. A weapon doesn't care who it hurts. But you do. You care so much that you're terrified of hurting anyone." She squeezed Ella's hands. "That's not dangerous, Celine. That's beautiful." But Ella wasn't convinced. That night, she dreamed again. She dreamed of the ancient thing. She could see it now, in her dreams. It was vast beyond comprehension. Its body was made of stone and shadow, and something older than time itself. Its eyes were like black holes, pulling everything into their depths. And it was calling to her. "Moonborn," it whispered, its voice like the grinding of continents. "Come to me, Join me. Together, we will remake this world." "No," Ella said in the dream. "I won't. You will," the creature said, "because you are part of me. Your power comes from me. You are my daughter, my creation, my instrument of destruction." Ella woke screaming. Kael was there in seconds, pulling her into his arms, holding her as she shook. "And it's okay," he whispered. "It's okay. You're safe. You're here. You're with me." "It's calling to me," Ella gasped. "The ancient thing. It's calling to me. It says I'm part of it. It says my power comes from it." Kael pulled back and looked at her, his expression serious. "Listen to me," he said. "You are not part of it. Your power doesn't come from it. Your power comes from you, from your bloodline, from the Moonborn who came before you." He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are not a weapon," he said fiercely. "You are not an instrument of destruction. You are Selene. You are the Moonborn. And you are so much more than that creature could ever be." He kissed her forehead, not her lips, but her forehead. A gesture of devotion, of protection, of love. "I believe in you," he whispered. "Even when you don't believe in yourself, I believe in you." The next morning, Ella was training with Ronan when she felt it. A presence, vast and ancient and impossibly old. It was moving beneath the earth, moving toward them, moving with purpose. "Stop," she said, holding up her hand. Ronan lowered his fists. "What is it?" "It's coming," Ella whispered. "The ancient thing. It's coming now." She could feel it moving through the earth like a heartbeat, could feel the ground trembling beneath her feet, could feel the very fabric of reality beginning to tear. She ran to find Kael. He was in the main lodge with the other pack leaders, discussing strategy. When she burst through the door, every head turned toward her. "It's here," she said, her voice shaking. "It's coming. I can feel it." Kael stood immediately. "How long?" "Hours," Ella said. "Maybe less. It's moving fast." The pack leaders began to move, shouting orders, preparing for battle. But Kael walked to Ella and took her hands. "Listen to me," he said. "When it comes, I need you to stay close to me. I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "Yes," Ella said. "And I need you to know something," Kael continued. His eyes were intense, desperate. "I need you to know that I would tear the world apart to keep you alive. I would burn everything to ash. I would sacrifice my own soul. You are everything to me, Selene. Everything." He pulled her close and held her, and for a moment, the world fell away. There was only Kael, only the feeling of his arms around her, only the knowledge that no matter what came next, she wasn't facing it alone. "If I have to die tonight," Ella whispered against his chest, "I want you to know. You saved me. In every way that matters, you saved me." Kael pulled back and looked at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. "You're not going to die," he said fiercely. "I won't allow it." But even as he said it, they both knew the truth. The ancient thing was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. The ground began to shake, not gently, not gradually, but all at once. The entire forest convulsed, trees snapped like toothpicks, the cabin shook, and cracks appeared in the walls. And then, in the distance, Ella saw it. A shadow, massive and terrible, rising from the earth like a mountain made of shadow. Its eyes opened, vast, titanic eyes that burned with an ancient hunger. And when it looked at her, Ella felt the weight of its attention like a physical force. The pack shifted into their wolf forms, preparing to fight. But Kael grabbed Ella's arm. "Not yet," he said. "Wait." The creature rose higher, its body emerging from the earth. It was made of stone and shadow, and something older than time itself. Its voice, when it spoke, made the very air vibrate. "She has awakened," it said, its words like the grinding of continents. "Finally, the Moonborn has awakened, and now we will be whole again." Ella felt the pull of its power, felt it trying to draw her toward it, trying to merge with her, trying to make her part of itself. But then Kael was there, his hand gripping hers, anchoring her to the present moment. "Look at me," he said. "Not at it. Look at me." Ella looked into his golden eyes, and suddenly, she understood. She understood what she was. She understood what she was meant to do. She was the Moonborn, and she was not a weapon. She was a choice. She raised her hand, and the symbols on her skin began to glow, brighter and brighter, until the entire forest was illuminated by her light. The ancient creature shrieked, a sound that shattered stone and split the earth. But Ella didn't attack it. Instead, she did something far more powerful. She sealed it. With a gesture, she sent it back into the earth, not destroyed, not killed, but imprisoned, bound by her power, bound by her will, bound by the choice she'd made to protect this world, not to destroy it. The creature fought against the bonds, thrashing and screaming, but Ella held firm. She held the seal in place, even as it tried to break free, even as it tried to pull her down into the darkness with it. And then, finally, it was done. The creature was sealed. The ground stopped shaking. The forest fell silent. Ella collapsed, and Kael caught her, pulling her into his arms. "You did it," he whispered. "You did it. You saved us all." But as Ella looked up at the blood-red moon, she felt something shift in the air. Something ancient. Something that had been waiting for this moment. A presence. Vast and terrible and impossibly old. And it was turning its attention toward her, because sealing the creature hadn't destroyed it. It had only awakened something far worse. Something that had been sleeping beneath the sealed creature for 1,000 years. Something that was now beginning to stir. And deep beneath the snow, in caverns that hadn't seen light in a millennium, something massive turned its head. Something that was older than the prophecy, older than the pacts, older than the world itself. And it was coming for her.